On this episode of the Untold Story podcast, we're looking back at last night's Fox News Democracy 24 election night coverage, where Martha McCallum and Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier sat down with Dana Perino, Brit Hume, and more to react live as election results rolled in.
The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
The former president's comeback will be complete with a win in Wisconsin, a state that he narrowly lost 4 years ago. He is now the second president in U.S. history to win non-consecutive terms. The first was Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s. Senator J.D. Vance will become the 50th vice president of the United States. Voters express deep frustration with the Biden administration, and former President Trump and the future President Trump overperformed in urban areas, particularly with men, proving that the strategy that they doubled and tripled down on over the course of the last few months absolutely succeeded and brought him back to the White House.
47th president of the United States, former President Trump now defeats Vice President Kamala Harris, who entered this race just over 100 days ago. And for Democrats, they were projecting the possibility of running the table with battleground states. David Plouffe with the Democratic campaign of Harris campaign suggested that just yesterday. Now it is possible that Donald Trump runs the table with these states and builds on a big landslide electoral win. We don't know where the popular vote is going to finish out, but we do know that he will be going back to the White House, and with him, Brit Hume, will be a lot of changes because he will have been there once and will know what he wants to do.
You know, he often accounts for the fact that he had so much turnover in his first term, in his term as president, by the fact that he didn't really know Washington, and he was new to this realm that he had come to win the presidency in, and he promises us that now he knows whom he wants to hire. Now he knows the kind of people he wants to have around him. A lot of people are saying that means a lot of very experienced people around Washington will be ruled out, and maybe they will. But it's going to be very interesting to see the kind of people he reaches out to and reaches out for in the days and weeks ahead as he.
And you've seen you can see the joy on all these people's faces. Think about the angst and the, all that this campaign has been through. And now there is the prospect of creating what you want to create in a second administration. Your thoughts, 30,000 feet of this win.
Indictments, 2 assassination attempts, an unlikely come-from-behind victory, and history is made tonight. This is a huge moment, particularly because this is a tectonic shift of the Republican Party. If all of this exit polling is true, you now have Black voters, Latino voters, young voters coming in a way that we haven't seen the party bring in a very long time, and that's due to former president, now soon to be current President Trump. And I just want to say this as we wait for him to come out. I remember having a conversation with Ivanka Trump in 2016 about his remarks. And before he went out to give those remarks, he had speech A and speech B. Speech A was a more boisterous Trumpian speech. Speech B was a speech full of unity. And he looked up, Ivanka said, saw the faces of crying Hillary voters. He ripped up the boisterous speech and said he wanted to heal the nation. And the first words he said were an appreciation for Hillary Clinton, for her service to our country. And then he said, now it is time for America to bind the wounds of division. And he said, we are a party of all races, creeds, and religions. That is more true tonight than it was 8 years ago. And I fully expect President Trump right now is maybe ripping up that more boisterous speech and preparing to unite the country.
It's an amazing message.
I hope Kayleigh's right. I hope you're right. And we're gonna get a chance to see here in a minute. Trey Gowdy said something on your show the other day about how one of the things that you hope also is they're a little more prepared this time. They've got a great transition team, and they're going to need it. And I hope that there are a lot of people who want to go in and be helpful.
Trey?
Yeah, I think his transition team has done a wonderful job vetting potential candidates. And to Kayleigh's point, I think a liberated Donald Trump, he's never going to be on the ballot again. This is his last term. I think, Harold, he will surprise his detractors. I think he will be not anything like what his detractors have described him as being now that he is liberated. If I'm wrong, you can hold me to that.
I hope you're right.
I think a liberated Donald Trump is going to shock his detractor.
He has said that the assassination attempts had an impact on him. We saw him in many ways return to the very rough and tumble style that we've seen in Donald Trump towards the end of this. But now he will take the stage tonight as the next president of the United States, and he will not be able to run again.
Yeah.
And I think that is another liberating factor potentially for President Trump. Katie.
We'll never underestimate the power of unfinished business. This is a president who has caught lightning in a bottle twice, and the second time around, he now has a MAGA mandate. He will have a Senate that he can use to push through his cabinet appointees, who can work with him on legislation, who can potentially replace a number of justices on the Supreme Court.
He could build a wall.
He could build a wall. He has a working group in Washington, D.C. We'll see what happens with the House. But he also has been working very hard on his transition, get the right people around him. He talks about the lessons he's learned about the first time in the White House. So this is a mandate tonight for him. And I think you should get a lot of credit for doing the work on the ground, going to these states to pull these Senate candidates across the line with him.
Bret, what do you think the analysis is going to be? There's going to be a lot of time to digest all of this. We're focused now on what the incoming president is going to say. What do you think the analysis is going to be on the Democratic Party and what went wrong there?
Well, I think it's going to be, agonizing. I think it's going to take a little while for consensus to form about what the party needs to do next, or what it did wrong this time. It'll be grudging at first. One can certainly imagine that, if the party were smart and shrewd political voices were heeded, that there'd be some major changes in their agenda and their approach in this. And you think of the issue sets that they tried to run on against this man that failed. They need to reconsider all of that. And I think it'll take a while. Now, our colleague and friend Mark Halperin, who's been very astute this particular cycle, he thinks there's going to be blood in the streets and people are going to be hysterical. I hope not, but it could happen.
Dana?
I am really looking forward to reading some of the stories, probably with a lot of anonymous sources amongst Democrats with the recriminations, and it's going to be fast and furious. And you will have people saying that Joe Biden should have dropped out the day after, not dropped out, but said he was not running for re-election on the day after that midterm in 2022, and either endorsed her or said, let there be a primary, and Dr. Jill Biden, there will be thoughts about her, and I wonder how chilly that White House is going to be for the next 90 days as they try to figure it out.
And let me just say that as Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris will certify the election results on January 6th.
A lot of irony in that moment. Harold, your thoughts?
This is how our country is organized, and it's a great education, I think, for people who had very high passions in this race. There are Democrats who were fervently for Joe Biden. He performed poorly during a debate, and the party switched to Kamala Harris, and there was genuine excitement, I think, built over a period of time. And some of that excitement was an aversion and almost a dislike and a disdain for Donald Trump. But I hope it's a moment that we can all grow from, because if we don't, not in a selfish, partisan way, Democrats won't progress. And I don't think you can fly and soar as a great country unless you have both wings working together. And President Trump, tonight, I'm going to be interested in that tone, Kayla. I was reminded of your words, reminded of what you said as you shared it. I remembered that story. And I hope and pray for the country tonight that President Trump, who has every right to be joyful, every right to celebrate, will give a speech with that tone tonight that in many ways could help him do all of the things that he campaigned on in this campaign.
What does this mean for the never-Trumpers, the Republicans, and the Lincoln Project people, and Bill Kristol, and people like that who seem to abandon everything they'd ever previously believed in order to oppose Donald Trump?
Kellyanne?
We'll get to the never-Trumpers soon enough and the hundreds of millions of dollars wasted on them. Look, Donald Trump won this on policy and personality. I don't want to be remiss here. He is talking about energy independence, manufacturing, an economy where everybody is working, no new foreign wars, getting out of the entanglements we currently have, respecting and resourcing law enforcement, border patrol, military. And by the way, friends, we don't get those policies without that personality. What did we hear during the Republican primaries? I want Donald Trump's policies without his personalities. Good luck with that. You don't get this strength and this resolve and this toughness. You don't get those policies without that. But I want to say this. It's on this phone that Huma Abedin placed the call 2:30 a.m. on November 9th, 2016. And on the other line was Secretary Clinton to concede the race to Donald Trump on my phone. I handed it to him, and I said to Vice President-elect Mike Pence, make sure Hillary actually concedes. She did. And President Trump was gracious to them, too. Yep. They came to the luncheon at the Capitol after the inauguration. The Obamas and the Clintons were there. I was there to see it myself. And then something just changed. The Washington Post said, let's impeach him at noon, 2 minutes after he's inaugurated. Melania wrote about this in her book. So, Harold, I hear you. I hope everybody can unify. But I got to tell you, my friend, I think it starts with your party and not mine.
Fair enough.
They got to get. They had this guy in a courtroom. He's not an indoor cat. I get it. They have him. They had him in a courtroom. They have him impeached. They have him. And whether people think that was justified or not, now is a good time to respect the will of the people. Forget about us, the will of the people.
I agree with you. I'm just saying be a gracious winner and let's move the country forward. I agree. And I know you will. That was my only point.
I heard a gracious winner today when I talked to him. I really did. He's known for a while. He was going to, I wrote a piece on FoxNews.com October 11th saying he's going to have a narrow landslide. I think he's felt that for a while, but he wanted to go and earn it.
And I even think the people around him have to be gracious too. I think I don't know him as well as you, but I hope the people around him can be gracious as well.
That's a different question.
We can always hope.
Well, that comes from the top.
Once more, I just want to say how much money was spent on this election. $15.9 billion with a bill.
Wow.
If you spend $1,000 a day for 2,740 years, that would be $1 billion. It was 16 times that. What has been spent on every race, the presidency, the whole deal. $16 billion. And here we are.
What is that, a check you can write to for every American? What did you say?
$50. It's about 40.
I want my $50.
But I just want to say, every presidential race has a medium. You know, you go back to television, cable.
Yeah.
This was, in some ways, a podcast experience of a campaign. And those are free to go on podcasts. And you wonder how much of that money really needed to be spent when there's a lot of ways to reach people. But I think it's really interesting and something we'll be talking about a lot in terms of the reach of these endorsements.
You know what I was struck by? The final
and Musk and the rest of them.
The final ads where they
were excellent.
They talked about making America great again, but then ending with the assassination attempt and that fist in the air, the iconic image, and the fight.
Absolutely.
Warrior president.
And it worked.
Yep.
Bret.
Yeah, toughest son of a gun we ever saw. And that was the last note we see in that ad. And I think, for whatever you think of the guy, you got to admire that.
Yep.
I mean, the adversity that he's faced, everything we've seen in other presidencies and other political figures who've gone through all kinds of trouble are pale in comparison to what he's been put through.
No,
maybe it's time for his enemies to stop it.
Not only that, but the energy that he has is truly amazing. He's the Energizer Bunny. Let's check in with Aisha Hosni, speaking of the Energizer Bunny, at Trump headquarters in West Palm. Aisha, this has been a big night all night long. I'm sure it's really getting fever pitch now.
A big night, Bret and Martha, a long campaign for the former president, for all of us, the press corps that have been following him around now for more than a year. The crowd went absolutely nuts when Fox News called it here, and people were hugging each other, they were high-fiving each other, that people were on FaceTiming. I think they couldn't believe it that this happened tonight and they didn't have to wait days and days and days. We are now awaiting the former president to take the podium. He is here in the building, as is his running mate, now Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. They're backstage. We were told they were going to come out as soon as the election was called, and so now we're just waiting. We asked for a 2-minute warning. I don't know if we're going to get one, but hopefully we will see him soon. And so I just want to add a little bit of perspective, just as a Capitol Hill reporter that's been covering the former president for a while. When I came to Congress 3 years ago, talked privately with many powerful Republicans who did not want to see the former president back in Washington, and then to see the legal battles that he went through and Republicans having to stand up for him. And then he went through the primary process. As Kellyanne Conway just said, he earned it state by state by state, and then came back to Washington in the spring and went to the RNC and claimed the nomination. This is the greatest comeback that I've ever witnessed personally myself. And so I look forward to seeing what he says to the country here tonight and to his supporters. Back to you.
Aisha, thank you. The Harris team is now texting to say Vice President Harris will speak tomorrow, and that will be her response to the election results. That's all we have from the Harris team, which is really strange. I mean, from a PR perspective, Dan?
No, I also just think it's a shame, because I remember when John Kerry did this to George W. Bush in 2004, and you work so hard, and I know that they're disappointed, but you should concede and let your opponent have their election night, and let everybody that's there at Trump, at Mar-a-Lago, where are they? They're in Palm Beach.
They're in West Palm, at the convention center.
At the convention center, like, let them have their moment without anyone. Like, I remember Andy Card had to come in and say, well, yes, we know we won, but we have to wait until John Kerry concedes. And then we all had to traipse back in the next morning and wait, and you don't get that moment. I don't think it's right. And
that's not to say there's not going to be a phone call. There could be a phone call tonight, but she's not going to speak publicly.
If there's a phone call, they have to make it public. And then nobody needs to hear from her. So if I were her, I would do it tonight.
I mean, they had that whole setup in front of Howard University.
It's all for people who were already there.
Everybody was there, and it does feel like you want to just collect the moment and do it the way that people used to.
They were holding out hope. They were holding out hope that the blue wall could somehow come together, but it's going to be a red wall.
90 minutes before that, they were told to go to bed.
Yeah. I got that text.
90 minutes before all of this, Jen O'Malley Dillon, the Harris campaign person, said everyone can go to bed and come back tomorrow. So
she didn't even address her own supporters. We want her to call President Trump. She didn't talk to the people who were assembled there for hours for her. It just seems very ungracious. By the way, it ended up being a very bad split screen. You probably couldn't see it in here, but they're filing out, and he's expanding his folks, and they're all excited for him. Look, I think that Kamala Harris was a sign of the times, but I think that Trump's a metaphor for the country. And when he says we don't surrender, fight, 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 we get back up, I just think I think that's what it is. The other thing I just want to say, maybe it's as a Catholic, maybe it's just as a Trump supporter, maybe it's just as a flawed human being. We all get second chances in this life. Rarely do we get a second chance as big as this one. And I have got to believe the man that I know and that Kayleigh worked with is going to work with a certain alacrity and energy to get things done very quickly. What he can do through executive order, what he could do with the Congress, bringing in the governors. Nobody gets a second chance this big in their lives and just puts it on the shelf like it's a trophy or a gold star. He's going to use that as a platform for good and undo some of these bad policies, and I think do even better. You know, these celebrities, these athletes, he's got job creators and innovators. He's got Elon Musk and Dana White. He's got people who make stuff, who people say, wow, there's an American success story, and he's going to bring them aboard.
The Untold Story continues right after this.
So Vice President Harris has now encountered what is known as the Van Buren curse. It's the failure of the vice president to get to the presidency. Only two have done it, and that is Martin Van Buren in 1836 and George H.W. Bush in 1988. You know, the question is what the Republican Party looks like now. And Kayleigh, it's a multiracial party, to your point. It's working class. And maybe it's the future. I mean, it's Elon Musk. It is Joe Rogan and podcast. It is, you know, there's an opportunity here on both parties to realign and change.
There are going to be a lot of conversations that go on to that end. Who is the next standard bearer for President Trump? Is it J.D. Vance? Is he the one who picks up the torch after a 4-year legacy-defining term with the success that Kellyanne's describing? Is it J.D. Vance that picks it up? There's going to be a conversation about ground game. I mean, Kamala Harris over the weekend, they were saying they were knocking 1,000 doors a minute, and I have no reason to doubt that. It was an extraordinary ground game, but do ground games matter as much as podcast, as much as real, authentic, viral moments like President Trump on the garbage truck or, you know, President Trump at McDonald's, these viral moments that really captured the attention of the nation? And what does the Republican Party look like going forward? It's a broad coalition. It's an exciting coalition, and I think if President Trump manifests that working man agenda, no tax on tips, no, limit on credit card interest rate, that's a working man's economic agenda. And if he makes that happen in 4 years, this party may look like this for quite some time.
I'm struck when you're talking about the authenticity part of this, because when I think about him with the French fries at McDonald's and standing up with blood on his face, fight, fight, fight. You can't fabricate. No, consultant can create those moments, Trey. Those are organic and they are authentic. And I think that is something that Kamala Harris fell really far short on in terms of the authenticity measure.
Yeah, if you had told me that a billionaire from New York would be able to connect with middle America, I would have questioned that. To my friend, the gentleman from Tennessee, autopsies are painful, especially when the patient's still alive. I wonder what the Democrat Party is going to go through in the next weeks and months, because this was a loss that I don't think anyone saw coming, not to this magnitude. So what does the autopsy look like if you're a Democrat? It's painful, but you have to have one. How did you lose, and how did you lose this soundly?
The easiest way to do it for them would be to simply say, if Joe Biden hadn't clung to the job, clung to the nomination, and hidden his condition with a lot of help, they could have had an open nominating process and gotten a more attractive nominee.
But I don't know that
who would have been freer to walk away from Biden policies and would have had a better shot. I mean, I think that's the easiest, simplest solution. But I'm not sure that's where they'll go. But that makes sense.
I don't think you can pass over an African American female, which is a very loyal constituency for the Democrat Party. I don't see how they could have passed over.
But if he'd left the office and she'd run, she would have been put through a different process and would have had competition, and the whole thing would have been different.
Against her?
Who would have run against her? But Harold, you have a Democratic Party that's pretty old. I mean, you have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden.
We got Andy Beshear, you got Josh Shapiro, you got Gretchen Whitmer.
That's a different kind of Democrat, and that is not the progressive Democrat that wins in a primary. So is it going to be a change in your party?
Well, we nominated Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, who were not from that
the old days
party. So I think we'll do that. Look, tonight, what happened this evening and what's happened over the last year has been described. There were those on this panel who didn't believe that this resurrection could have occurred. So if this can happen, things are possible in politics if you're willing to change and willing to have courage and determination. And whatever Democrats or anybody want to say about this guy who's been elected our president, he personifies that courage and determination and persistence. So I think, Trey, you were asking a serious question, and Bret gave a very serious answer. I think that's going to be part of the answer. And we've got to look long and hard about whether or not the way we campaign sometimes with identity politics at the end, is that the right way to do it? But before you get there, you got to get a purpose and a message. And we'll get there. We've got a long history of figuring these things out as a nation, as a party, and we'll figure it out this time.
So the carnage speech got a lot of attention at the inauguration. Do we think that?
Oh yeah.
This speech.
I was going way back.
We're actually told that the teleprompters have been removed from the stage, so we could be in for a long haul here. We don't know. But what do you think? He's coming, but there may not be teleprompters.
I'm saying he goes off the teleprompter anyway. But he, the other night at the Al Smith dinner, he was upset that there were teleprompters, because he doesn't want to use them. So.
Right. So, Dana, what does this speech look like?
This one right now?
Yeah.
I think look, I don't know. He's one of the most unpredictable people, too. So I think that's why we're all here, and I'm wide awake, and I've been awake for almost 24 hours now. And I am curious to see. I think I wasn't just thinking about this speech. I'm thinking about the inauguration speech, which would be 8 years since Carnage speech. He has a wide range of the types of speeches that he can give. If you think even within a speech, there's range. If you think about the RNC convention, it started off with like, oh, wow, yeah. And then after a while, I was like, wow, he's still talking. And it was like so long, and it kind of got off script, and people thought, oh, he kind of lost an opportunity. But he didn't. I think if you look at these people who would take off work, drive somewhere in the middle of the night to go and get in line to wait for hours to then stay at a rally for hours. And part of the things he has done as well is created this camaraderie amongst people so that you could go to a place where you're not afraid to wear your red MAGA hat and you could say, I'm not the crazy one. I'm not the only one who thinks the way that I do. I can actually have friends. And that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be outreach to the other side. I believe in love thy neighbor. I love all of that. But he has created something special here. So I kind of want him to take a victory lap tonight. I don't think this is necessarily the moment for unity, especially when she won't even concede and give him the night to celebrate.
Yeah. Kellyanne, you were looking at the popular vote. He's still up and could finish up.
And part of it is because he did run up the totals in places I was looking at, even the rural counties in Pennsylvania. He was going to win them by significant double digits, but he won them that much more. I think running up the totals in Florida, which was a swing state not that long ago, over 1.1 million votes or so. Kaylee, right, your home state. And this is, look, I think that when the Democrats take a look at this candidacy, it's not going to be, did she have too much time, not enough time? She's just a flawed candidate. She doesn't speak well. She doesn't work hard. I'm not being mean or partisan. I don't know why the country would have rewarded this candidate with the big job when she couldn't make the case what she does as vice president that affects our lives in a positive way. She was given that opportunity. I personally would like to thank the women of The View tonight.
Yeah.
For asking those questions, for having her on. Oprah, we see you, and so on and so forth. People who thought they were doing her a favor because they made her something she's not. It's the opposite for Trump. They make him something he's not. Take that one word, take that one line, take that cherry pick this, that, the other. You never get the essence. I go back, does everybody remember 5 years ago, so Laurel and Yanny, or what color dress? You hear Laurel, I hear Yanny. You see a blue dress, I see a yellow dress. We were all looking at the same thing. That's the way Donald Trump is in this country. There are people who look exactly the same person, and they see two different vistas. I think it's time that we try to see one. Look, I don't know who said it earlier. I'm a little worried about the reaction of the Democrats and the Kamala people here. I'm very worried. I think that there are a lot of unhinged people across the political spectrum. And we gave very little quarter to how many anti-Kamala voters are out there. I don't want to hear the words racism and sexism. It's eyesight and hearing. We were listening and watching her. And I'm very worried that we've not talked a lot about how violent people may be and angry because she lost.
Right.
I'm afraid of that.
Right. I mean, I can just imagine thinking about The View. And a week or so ago, they were saying, what is wrong with someone who would vote for him?
Michelle Obama said
and Joe Scarborough saying, we weren't raised like this. Who raised these people? So I can only imagine what tomorrow is going to look like.
Yeah. I will say when we talk about The View, what comes to mind is we mentioned the carnage speech that President Trump gave at his inauguration. And my mind automatically went to the unity speech that Biden gave. And he mentioned unity a half dozen times. But when you think about what we got over 4 years, there was the garbage comment that didn't come in isolation. There were all kinds of comments. Neanderthal was one of the first words he used to describe those who opposed his COVID edicts. The Mark Cuban comment, he was an official surrogate of the Kamala campaign. And for, as mean as some of President Donald Trump's tweets have been and people have problems with it, one thing I've challenged Democrats to find is one example of him disparaging the country, half of the country, and that's something he has not done. And so I expect you'll hear a unifying tone, and I expect you're going to see a very successful presidency and one untethered maybe from some of the things that were holding him back. What comes to mind is an Oval Office meeting that we had where Dr. Fauci was urging him not to open the country. And I watched President Trump fight vociferously, saying people are losing their jobs. We must open the country. He wanted to do it sooner than he did. I think a Donald Trump who goes with his instincts is going to be a Trump that ultimately leads a very successful country in second term.
That's all for this episode of The Untold Story. Tune in later this week as Martha continues covering what this election means for America.
You've been listening to The Untold Story with Martha McCallum. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Make sure to rate and review. For more podcasts, go to foxnewspodcast.com. Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.